Professor Makau Mutua is joining us in the studio, and we thank you very much for joining us today. Professor Makau Mutua is very many things. Let me just say two. He's the chair of the Kenya Human Rights Commission, one of the founders of the Human Rights Commission, and is also a distinguished law professor. You have taught law in very many countries in the world. Sindio?
I've been blessed.
Those two are good.
I've been blessed.
Now, Prof, how many years have you been chair of Kenya Human Rights Commission?
I don't count. You don't count years. You count quality of service.
I'm going to write that down.
You know, counting years is a job of bean counters. I don't do that.
That's what happens when people stay on a position for long and they don't want to be questioned.
Not really.
Somebody
not
who's
really.
a
It's like
perennial chairman of an
it's like
organization.
it's like asking me, how long have I been alive?
It's a leadership position, Prof. I mean,
No. It's not leadership. It's a service position and not leadership. When we founded the commission way back when in the United States with Maina Kiai, Willie Mutunga, Kiraiti Murungi, and Peter Karethi, we were driven by one goal and one goal only: to serve this country. And actually, we did it abroad because that organization could not be established in this country because the use of the two words, human and rights, was tantamount to sedition. Yeah. So it's a service position. It is not a leadership position. We're still serving. And we'll continue to serve until this country is free.
Can't it be both?
But it's for others to decide if it's leadership. For me, it's just service.
When you're a forerunner or a trailblazer, whether you like it or not, of necessity, you are a leader.
Well, then you humble me by those words.
Prof, you say you're going to keep doing this until the country is free. So the illusion
Serving.
is that
Serving.
you're going to continue serving until the country is free.
Yes.
So then there's a presumption that the country is not free. Why would you say that?
You see, a country is not free, and if you live here, as I suppose you do.
Sometimes.
She's also a citizen of the world.
Oscillating.
Well, you consider the indicia of all of that. Our people live in penury. I think, for example, over the last, 2 years, because of COVID, I have never received so many entreaties for help than I've received the last 2 years. From relatives, from friends, even from strangers. I mean, my inbox is full of entreaties for help. That is not a free country, where people cannot make ends meet, where people cannot afford a meal, where people cannot go to hospital and get served. That is not a free country. Now, of course, freedom is a journey. It is not a destination. But there are countries that are freer than others, and ours is less free than others. We are an unfree people. And that's part of why, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is running to free this country.
To free the country.
Yes.
Prof, when you were leaving the country, going on exile in the 80s,
Yes.
and then you and the colleagues that you've just mentioned formed the Kenya Human Rights Commission. What vision did you have in mind? When you're talking about a Kenya Human Rights Commission, obviously at that point you are thinking human rights, Kenya are not in the same sentence and we need to bring them together.
Yes.
What vision did you have for the country at that point?
Life is about possibilities. And it's about dreaming. It's about hope. It's about trying to create a better tomorrow. As a young man, I grew up initially in Kitui with, sort of sojourns, if you will, or forays into Nairobi. And I just remember just how difficult it was for our people. I remember One day in Kitui, for example, it was about 7 o'clock at night, or in the early evening, let me say. And I was in Kitui town, which is, I live, my ancestral home is around there. Mm-hmm. And I was just, prowling around with my friends at 7 o'clock in the town. And we were arrested by the police. And they put us in the back of what would be called a paddy wagon, kind of a police van. And I said, why are you arresting us? And they said, no, you're vagrants. Vagrants in our own country, within a stone's throw of my own home. Mm. So that was one memory from my childhood. I remember seeing very many hungry people. Just hungry people. Growing up in the village, there were fewer things. No access to many utilities that we should take for granted. Running water, electricity, and so on. And then there was just the cruelty of life. The cruelty of life. So those are the things that really stuck in my mind. Obviously, there were very good things as well. I mean, I had a great family, I had great friends, and so on. But, when they report the news, they don't report safe landings of airplanes. They only report
when it crashes.
So I was thinking about those things that we did not have. And those are the things that drove me to form the commission. Obviously, there was police violence, there was police brutality, the political space was not open, the press was not free. There are all these things that drove us to do these things. And so we were trying to create a society of possibility where individuals like yourselves and myself, for example, could realize our human potential. That was a dream. And as I've said, that dream has not been achieved. Obviously, there have been some steps that encouraging the 2010 Constitution, the creation of institutions of governance that sometimes function, not always. So some of those things are good. The formation of the commission, the bringing the commission home, because after we formed it in the United States, we brought it home, and Maina Kiai, came here to be our first executive director. That was a very big step, I thought. And today, I think it's taken for granted that such institutions can exist. And they do exist. Sometimes, of course, with some difficulty, but they do exist.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Professor, if you look at the progress of our march towards democratic freedom, where would you place us on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Where 1 being dismal and 10 being excellent.
It's like I said, it's a journey and it's a process. And sometimes it's a 2-step forward and a 1-step backward proposition. I would say that since 1991, when the doors were opened, or not really opened, but forced open by individuals whom you all know, the people we are calling second liberators, people like Anyang Nyong'o, people like Orengo, people like Mutunga, people like even Martha Karua, Ngilu, of course Raila, Odinga, and others. When they forced, and some of us we helped, when that was forced open, that was a great moment of hope. And we thought there were possibilities, But, transforming societies is a very big challenge. Freedom comes 1 small inch by 1 small inch. It does not come in miles. And to transform a culture of autocracy, of dictatorship, of penury, of deprivation is very difficult. So when I look back, I see this movement back and forth of change. Today we can sit here and we can talk openly. It used to be that you would come and talk like this and then you would be carried away. So I would say, I don't want to upset my fellow Kenyans, but I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I would judge us, a very difficult 3.
Aye. Prof, surely. With all those things that you've said, you land at 3. Over the last couple of years,
Yes.
even in the last elections, people
Yes.
who have followed you closely have seen you openly come out to say that you think that the best person to move us forward,
Yes,
maybe hopefully to even take us now beyond 5,
yes,
would be Raila Odinga.
yes.
Why? Is it because he's been in the trenches? Is it because when you look at the journey, he is among those that are considered the leaders of the second liberation? Or is it because of the person that he is? Why Raila? Why not anybody else? Why not Martha Karua? Or Kiraitu Morongi? Or Makau Mutua?
Yeah, so, difficult moments, call for people who have been tried and tested and who have delivered, and people who have stood in the breach for the country and who have served selflessly and who do not seek something for themselves, but also people who in their both public and private lives demonstrate a love for the country. I think, unless you've been living in Mars or even another further planet like Pluto, you will be aware of what Mr. Odinga has done for this country at great cost to himself and to his family. I know him as a personal friend, but I also know him as a political soulmate. And I know him as a person who has tried whichever way to move this country forward from, on the scale of 1 to 10, from a 1 to a 2 to a 3. And I would say even that 3, that we are where we are today, according to me, has a lot to do with him. Mr. Odinga is our Mandela. Okay? And, I would say, without batting an eyelid, that he's the first among equals of the people that you have mentioned, myself included. And I think it's only proper and fair for him to be given this opportunity by the people of this country to show us what he can do in the highest office in the land.
You talk about transforming societies, that it is through the transformation of society that you can start to take steps towards a country being free.
Yes.
Would you say, from what you see, or even, examples of when these leaders, when this one that you're talking about has been in positions of influence, has been in positions of power, have you seen steps towards a transformation of society that could essentially lead towards freedom? Because they say you won't just be able to pick up the mantle and start running. There must have been markers along the way that would show that you can actually do it if given the opportunity.
Yeah. So obviously I speak about Mr. Odinga as an iconic, even historic figure. I talk about him as someone who has, not just, talked, but has walked the talk. Someone who laid down a gauntlet and said, I'll do anything for this country. I'll pay any price for this country. So sacrifice is one thing that's very important. I think the second thing that's very important is to show that he loves other people and other things other than himself. And I think he has shown that. I think when he was given an opportunity, for example, as a minister and as a prime minister, he produced. Some of the ideas that are being implemented today by this government, started with him. Like some of this infrastructure that we are talking about, that we are seeing today. Some of the steps to cut corruption in this country. I remember, him saying that if you're a contractor, and you want to do a project, you needed like 20 signatures, and every signature was a toll station for harvesting, resources, for rent seeking. He cut that down, I think, to 5 signatures. So he's shown that he can do these things. We've seen what he did, leading us to the 2010 Constitution. That was him. We saw what he did with giving us, I think this country's most effective president. That was Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki was not perfect. We all know that. But Mwai Kibaki was made president by Mr. Odinga, by that statement at Uhuru Park, Kibaki Tosha. So, my sister, I hope that you are not going to argue with me on these ones. These ones are like plain and clear sort of markers on the journey to freedom that Mr. Odinga has paid for us. So I would just say that, and he did that without occupying the highest office in the land. Okay, you've seen what happened in 2017, right? I mean, the election is bungled or stolen, whichever way you want to put it. The country is on tenterhooks. Businesses are collapsing. People have no hope. Then he reaches across the aisle, as he did, and shakes the hand of his foe. So part of the peace that we enjoy today, even that number 3 that I was talking about, is because
it's contributed by Raila.
It's because of the handshake.
I know what he has done.
Exactly.
So now that the president and Raila are working very closely,
yes,
is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
I don't know whether it was the former U.S. Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, who said that you do not make peace with your friends. You make peace with your foes, your opponents, your enemies. And, these two gentlemen have gone head to head several times. They have also collaborated in the past. As you know, they defeated
You're speaking of the referendum?
The referendum together. They worked together during that period. Their parents, as you know, were together at one point, then they fell apart. And so there's historical significance in all of these things. And I would say that that it's always a good thing, when people on opposite ends of the scale come back together for the sake of the country. But I also want to say, we live in a country that is fractured along ethnic lines. And one of the biggest fault lines in this country has been between the Luo and the Kikuyu. And I would say, and I would challenge anyone to say the opposite, that when those two communities work together, good things happen for this country. So the healing that I think is manifest, I think it's a good thing. So I would say it's a good thing for them to work together.
Conversation continues with Professor Makau Mutua. Prof, now that your friend Raila Odinga shook hands with the president, do you now feel a bit better and more comfortable referring to Uhuru Kenyatta as President Uhuru Kenyatta?
Well, I mean, whether I refer to him as president or not is really immaterial. Because I've said before, I think you saw the conversation I had with one Githu Muigai and others when I was being interviewed for the position of Chief Justice. They were stuck on this point, But the point really is immaterial. The Constitution, the courts, and other instruments of power, declared him so. I was just as a a private citizen exercising my conscience to protest what I thought was an election that had gone wrong.
My question is whether your conscience is now clearer.
I would not talk about my conscience. I would simply say that there are facts on the ground, and those facts, I recognize them. I would simply say that, obviously, the facts of that election have not changed, but the two competitors have come together, to work together. I recognize that fact as well, and it's good for the country. So it's not about my conscience. Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
I don't know why you don't want us to go there, because it's a matter of public conversation.
Well, that
is he Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta or is he President Uhuru Kenyatta to you, Professor Makau Mutua?
Well, the last time I checked, his gender was male. He's Mr. Mr. Kenyatta.
It's a point well made. And perhaps it's a pointer to the exercise of personal freedoms that we are assured of within our constitution. Sometimes the manifestation of it may not be what we think it ought to be, but there it is. Now,
Yes.
Listening to you eloquently listing and putting across values and qualities that you attribute to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, completely impressive. But then to a self-declared supporter of the man, I expect nothing less. Yes, you wouldn't really be a stalwart supporter if you didn't extol the virtues that you thought were outstanding and that people ought to consider.
Yes.
One little question though.
Yes.
Does our history also support your views?
Yes. So sometimes, I wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And when I do, I criticize myself, for my shortcomings.
Hey, Prof, what sort of bed do you sleep in?
It's a white body bed.
Right. It's the only way.
But the next question is, which side of the bed do you sleep on?
Yeah. So this is just to say that all of us are fallible as human beings. I think for Christians, they say that we have all fallen short
of the glory of God.
Of the glory of God. And so we all need some redemption. Mr. Odinga is not perfect. No one is. And I'm sure you'll be the first one to agree with that. He's taken some political steps in the past that have been criticized. We all know that. But I think he's always kept his eyes on the prize, which was the freedom for this country. I think that I challenge anyone, including your esteemed self.
Just pause for a second. Did you two hear?
We got it. We understand
Completely
that you milked
esteemed.
this for a long time. Thank you for that, Prof.
He's been anointed.
Right.
Yeah. That prefix shall forever precede his name. Esteemed.
Esteemed city.
Esteemed. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, I challenge anyone, including yourself, and I have a lot of respect for your views, as I do for everyone on this panel, that if you're always, when you are looking at individuals and their records, you always weigh that, the positive and the negative together, and you look at where the ledger comes out. And I think anyone who is fair-minded, anyone who has read our history and understands it, not just read it, but really understands it, will be hard-pressed, really. I mean, to when you put Kenyans on a scale and compare them, to find another political leader in this country who is as qualified as Mr. Odinga to be president. I think actually he's the most qualified person to ever run for the presidency of this country.
Be that as it may, Prof, we can't run away from the fact that is peppered with personal perception. True. And there are people who will make decisions. When they have weighed one to the other, the personal perception will come into play.
Yes.
So without talking specifically about personalities or characters, from your point of view, having dealt with human rights issues over the last 40 years, dealt with issues of socialism in the country, etc., etc., what would be the advice to give to the voter right now, if possible, from as an unbiased position as possible? How do you make a decision, weighing, knowing fully well that your perception comes into play?
Yes.
It will be very difficult, for example, to dissuade you from a position that you have taken because your perception has come into play.
Yes.
The experience that I have had as a voter comes into play.
Sure.
The one that he has had, and many other Kenyans will make a decision based on what they have perceived to be.
Yes.
How do you make a decision with all of those things coming into play?
Yeah, I mean, I think the franchise, which is the right of a citizen to elect their leaders or those who serve them. As I told Eric earlier, I like the word serve as opposed to lead. Who serve them? It's a complex choice, and the electorate, sometimes doesn't always have the facts, or doesn't always vote based upon, the desirable qualities that they should be looking at. Partly because I said our people are, unfree, and there are issues that they struggle with. There are questions of ethnicity. There are questions of all sorts of biases. Some of which you mentioned. What I would tell them as voters is to look at what people have done for the country, objectively. Looking at the leading candidates, ask yourself, what has this person done for me? Look at the party platforms that are being advanced. Does this person want to create a country of empathy or a country of antipathy? Okay? Does this person want to fight corruption? Which corruption, as you know, has gone to the bone marrow of our people. Today, it really makes me weep, with despair, but also disgust, when I see politicians dishing out money to people to come to political rallies. Openly. What kind of a person, first of all, dishes money like that, and what kind of a person takes it? Okay. We are a broken people. And so, as a broken people, we don't always make the right choices. You've seen in parts of this country, drug dealers elected to public office. You've seen thieves of public purses, of the public treasury, elected to leadership. You've seen land grabbers. You've seen rapists. And we know them. Okay, you've seen murderers in office. This says to me that our system is also broken, but that also our people are broken. So at some point, we're going to have to reset our moral calculus to do that. So I would say to you, these are objective things I'm talking about. They're not subjective. They are facts. Some of these people are mentioning criminals are sitting in office. So what I would say to you is look at what the people who are offering themselves for leadership or for service for the country have done and what they propose to do. But don't just look at empty language, because I've seen some people running around with slogans, and telling people to vote for slogans, slogans that do not mean much. Shall I say? I think that Yeah, my friend here is looking at me with curiosity.
We're waiting for the slogans. Say two of the leading slogans, for example. Which one?
Well, I think it's. I think so. So there's on the other side of the aisle. There's a gentleman who has been talking about wheelbarrows and bottom up. But you know, the wheelbarrow. Let me just say this because I got to get it out. The wheelbarrow is a pre-industrial Stone Age implement. You know, Stone Age implement. How can that surely be an aspiration for any person in this country? It's a tool for slave labor. It's a tool for slave labor. Let me tell you that. You've seen people pushing wheelbarrows, right? And rickshaws and so on. You know, how can that be an aspiration in the computer age? So that's one slogan. The other slogan, of course, is this question of hustling and so on, which has a double meaning.
Double, quadruple.
Quadruple meaning, you know, and so I think I will allow the listener to decide which meaning the word hustler, you know.
But those aren't the only narratives that we keep hearing. We hear Azimio.
Yes. So on the other side, but I had to talk about the other side, right? Just to be fair, because she was accusing me of just talking about my side.
Accusing? Not just yet.
So your side has Azimio.
You know, my side really has, you know, what we are trying to do is to create a society of opportunity, a society of inclusion.
Opportunity or equal opportunity?
A society of equal opportunity where when you come to the table, you are assured of a fair shake. You know, a society in which we are going to allow people to be capacitated in so many ways. That's what we are talking about. We're not so much running on slogans. You know, we are not. We are running on substance.
So you said...
we are running on substance, not slogans.
Let me bring you back to what you said. I mean, we are a broken society. We are a broken people.
Yes.
And at some point, we'll need to come together and re-engineer our own fabric as a country.
Yes, our own moral fiber.
Our moral fiber. Do you think Raila is the man for the job, and why? Because when you're saying all these things, Raila has actually held one of the highest offices in the land.
Yes.
As core head of government, constitutionally mandated head of government in this country. When he was head of government, he then also, of course, faced with the realities of the day. And that's part of my question. There's the political reality and the actual reality of our system. With the kind of corruption that we have in this system, with the kind of mismanagement that we have, are you not setting are you not setting Raila up for failure by placing such high expectations of the man? When clearly, when he was head of government for 5 years, did we see a drop in corruption? We didn't. When he was head of government for 5 years, did we see a more efficient government? We necessarily did not.
Yeah, so obviously one can critique any record, right? But first of all, let me correct something that you said, with all due respect. That Mr. Odinga was co-head of government. He was not. The office of Prime Minister was subordinate to the office of the President. Mr. Odinga could only do those things that the President allowed him to do in that office. And you know there are many disagreements. You know, with the Mr. Kibaki, there were many disagreements. They worked together, but there were many disagreements.
Of course, I'll give a lot of the leeway to you because you are the legal man and you are there sitting. But if my memory serves me right,
yes,
the accord, the Peace and Reconciliation Accord,
yes,
plus the Act,
yes,
plus the changing of the Constitution,
yes,
introducing the position of Prime Minister,
yes,
said that decisions of government shall be made in consultation between the two people. So there was a head of state, yes.
Yes.
But even Kibaki could not make decisions in his government without Raila's approval. That's why, for example, Kioko Kilukumi could not become the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, there is what is written on paper and what is done in practice. the instruments of the state of power are not exercised on paper. They are exercised in actual practice. And whereas I would say, and agree with you partly, that they work together, they consulted at times, but Mr. Kibaki clearly ran the government, and some of the things that Mr. Odinga wanted to do could not be done. That's just fact. I would say that, however, in areas where he was permitted to do something, like initiate infrastructure, clean up some of the corrupt practices, he did that, and he did that very well, in fact. I think what you want to do, Eric, is to look at what Mr. Odinga was able to do in that limited space and time. The other thing I think also that you should think about is, there are some people who are in power in this country. We do not know where their money came from. Okay? I can assure you that Mr. Odinga did not use that office, okay, to steal from the public. And that, to me, is one important indicia of the kind of man that he is.
Actually, my question, Prof, is
yes.
That was just limited power.
Yes.
If he gets the full power of the state,
yes,
as guaranteed in the Constitution,
yes,
do you actually believe that Raila Odinga would get into office and be able to deal with these realities that we have?
Yes.
And, for example, address corruption?
Yes. So it's a good question, Eric. Okay? And, of course, the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. Okay? We agree on that, don't
Yes.
we? Yeah, we agree on that. But Mr. Odinga is not going to become president and then govern alone. Okay? No one ever runs the state by themselves. It is the character and the quality of the people that you have around you, the kind of people that you are going to appoint, and why you are going to appoint them, and the kind of leeway that you're going to give them to execute on the mandate that you ran on, that matters. I can assure you that if Mr. Odinga is fortunate enough to be given this mandate by the people of Kenya, he is going to put together an A-team. Do you know, Eric, that this country has a lot of talent?
Yes.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
know that.
some of it is just sitting around
Right here.
around the table
fact,
here. Myself excluded,
Esteemed.
but some esteemed.
I mean,
And look at you. I mean, I was looking at you read the traffic stuff there, and I was blown away. So look, a lot of talent here. This talent has not been tapped and given, a free hand, to work. That is what he is going to do, and don't be surprised if he comes for you and asks you to go serve.
The professor here has changed tact. He's become a prophet. Professor, one of the things that I think is most difficult if you are someone who observes leadership from an academic perspective like ourselves here,
Yes.
and try to analyze things as we read and as we see them as they evolve, we are prescriptive. We tend to be prescriptive, and we talk about they should have done this, they could have done this. But even as we prescribe and as we look at these things closely, the thing that we realize, these things are never quite as easy as we think,
Yes.
and that there's a lot more to it than even we know.
Yes.
I'm going back to the question Eric was asking, because to me it's a pertinent question. Given how we know statecraft functions, and that it isn't in the leadership and the people who will be chosen, but there is an arm of the system that is in the civil service and other complementary services that actually run the country.
Yes.
And if they function with a certain understanding and a certain ethos, how do you change this so that we actually see change? Because they, in my opinion, is not the politician. The politicians talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Yes.
They are the ones who actually ensure that things work as they ought to.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, turning around a country, as you correctly point out, is like turning around the Titanic or turning around a big aircraft carrier. It's a big, massive job. And this underbelly of the state called the civil service. It's both a blessing and it's a curse. It's a blessing because it makes our systems function, but it's also a curse because by nature it's a conservative instrumentality that is difficult to transform. If it is corrupt, if it is inert, meaning that it doesn't move with agility, it's a problem, right? We can agree on that. But I think we can also agree that Kenya's civil service, for the longest of times, has done actually well as a professional service. Okay?
How do you judge this? How do you arrive at this understanding that they have done well?
So for example, if you just compare, it's a comparative statement. If you compare it with the civil services of other countries around the continent, they have done much better. It's a comparative thing. But we tend to know them more for, the corruption, and the rent seeking and so on that they have engaged in, than for the good things that they have done. They also have done some good things. So I think that the corrupt part can be sort of excised, okay, and taken out. But let me just say this: the power of demonstration is very important. The power of demonstration, leadership comes from the top. The tone that the president and the senior people set is very, very important. When we say that we are going to be doing zero tolerance for corruption, when we say that we're going to sanction people without pity for corruption, when we say that we're going to lock them up and throw away the key, we actually mean it. Sometimes you just need to use particular people who are corrupt to set an example and to set a tone, so that other people can understand that the day has changed.
There's a new sheriff.
I tell you, all of you, that how many serious thieves have been decapitated in this country? I mean, legally decapitated, not physically. How many? I mean, almost none. They go in, they come out. They go in, they go out. If you touch someone, they say, "Oh, now these people are finishing, quote unquote, our people," and so on and so forth.
They appeal it to within a life, branch of its life.
Yeah, that's how you reform the civil service. But I'm saying that there are good people in there. Let us not throw away the baby with the bathwater.
There are very many
good people.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, and we want to retain those, and we want to give them a reason to continue being good.
Possible for very many things to happen in this country. There are many people who are listening, and just like Nundu said, everybody has their own persuasion based on whether it's ethnic or whether it's their history with a person. Like your history with Raila, for example, has influenced how you view Raila. You've interacted with him closely. And everybody else. How would you persuade somebody who is currently persuaded on somebody else to now see things your way?
So I think that we must have respectful conversations. The people who support our opponents, are, good people. So I think the key is just to have respectful conversations with them, understanding that they have a right to make their own choices, but persuading them that, the grass will be greener on our side than on that side. You just have to respect people, and you must work hard for every vote. Take nothing for granted. Work hard for it.
Do you believe that with the way we are going, with the kind of changes that we're having to the law at this point in time, we are heading toward free, fair, credible, verifiable election?
Our elections have for the longest been shambolic. I don't think that's a revelation. It is not a eureka moment. It is just, it's a statement of fact. Yeah, because our IEBC has not done the job. And even before then, when Kivuito was there and others were there, there have been problems. That's why Mr. Odinga has won many times before and been denied. But I hope that this time around, there'll be a free and fair election which reflects the will of the electors.
Asante sana. Professor Makau Mutua, thank you very much for coming. Come again soon.
I will do so.
Right? As we head into the deep thick of the politics of the country. Come, let's continue debating on your side and the other sides, and also looking at the future of the country.